All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Bloomington Environmental Commission to order at 6 p.m. on today, November 19th, 2020. Linda, can you do a roll call for attendance?
Yes. Bailey Anderson.
Here.
Matt Caldy.
Here.
Susanna Evans Comfort. Meredith is out. Don Eggert.
I'm here.
Andrew Gentner.
I'm here.
Shelby Hostclaw.
Here.
Mike Litwin.
Present.
Daniel Olson. He's out, right? Dave Parkhurst.
Here.
Okay.
Perfect. We do have a quorum tonight. Thank you all for being here. We'll move on to introductions. We have a new commissioner here today with us. So let's all introduce ourselves and then we'll let her introduce herself to us. I'm Andrew Gunther. I'll start. I'm the chair of the commission. I've served on the Environmental Commission since 2018. I previously served on the Monroe County Environmental Commission and the Bloomington Board of Housing and Quality Appeals. I was a bookkeeper before the pandemic. Now I'm just currently a local government activist, to be quite honest with you. I'm looking forward to working with you all as always. So Linda, can you introduce yourself next?
Sure. I'm Linda Thompson. I'm the environmental planner in the Planning and Transportation Department, and also the liaison to the Environmental Commission.
Ben?
My name's Ben, and I'm the Environmental Commission Fellow. I just kind of started over the fall. I'm currently enrolled at IU with the MPA MSCES program.
Dave?
Hi, I'm a commissioner. I was a commissioner for 14 years, starting in 1974. And then I've started again about 5 years ago or thereabouts, and I'm glad to be here.
Mike?
Commissioner, I've been on the commission for a long time.
Don?
Don Eggert, retired environmental geologist. I've been on the commission just a little bit under 2 years. That's about it.
Shelby?
I'm a commissioner and I started, I believe, in March of this year. So I'm new too.
And Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt. I've been a commissioner for, I think, 4 years now. And that's all I got.
Bailey?
Hi, I'm Bailey Anderson. Brand new, obviously. I graduated from IU this May, actually, with an undergrad in international relations with a focus in environmental health and development. I'm also a professional swimmer here in Bloomington. I train with the varsity team, but I finished my NCAA eligibility a couple years ago, so I'm still here training, hoping to make the 2021 team for Canada.
Thank you for being here. We're glad to have you, and we look forward to working with you on all the Environmental Commission has to offer. Moving on to approval of minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look over the minutes that Ben sent you a while back? Anyone have any amendments they want to offer or corrections?
Were the minutes updated?
From when they were first sent?
From comments that came in by email?
Yeah, I updated all the comments, including yours, Andrew. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I saw your email.
Okay.
I just sent in some minor formatting things to make them flow a little bit easier. Okay, seeing no amendments, Linda can, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Linda, can you call the roll?
Yes, I sure will. Bailey? Abstaining?
Sure. Sorry.
Matt?
Yep, approve.
Don?
Approve.
Andrew?
Yes.
Shelby?
I'll abstain since I wasn't here for the last meeting.
Okay. Mike?
I approve.
Dave?
Fine, yes.
Okay.
All right, the minutes are approved. And the reason we're doing roll call, I know this is a new thing, but we were alerted by planning and transportation staff that per the governor's order, we do have to take roll call for all votes taken during the meeting. Just it's part of the part of the rules now. So we just want to abide by those as much as we can. So thank you for your patience. I know it takes a little bit longer than it normally does to get these things taken care of now. We'll move on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make a comment today? You can raise your hand and Ben can see you and unmute you. Anyone, Ben?
One, 6.
No.
All right, we'll make one more, a couple more seconds for them to go and we'll move on to our presentation. All right, seeing no public comment, we move on to our presentation by Andrea Webster of the Environmental Resilience Institute, who was a member of the Environmental Commission and we miss her dearly. Welcome back, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrew. I missed you guys too. It's fun to be back though, so I appreciated the invitation, Dave. So Dave asked me to talk a little bit about the Hoosier Resilience Index and specifically the climate projections for Bloomington and then the maps that are a part of the Hoosier Resilience Index. So what I'm going to do is give you guys a little PowerPoint presentation on it first and then pull it up on the web. I found that showing it on the web over Zoom, it operates pretty slowly with my internet. So I think it's easier if we do it by presentation first. So let me get that going. Let's see here. Okay, so as many of you remember, but because I'm new to a few of you, I'll give you guys this background. So I'm a staff member at IU's Environmental Resilience Institute. So this is an institute that started in 2017, so it's still somewhat new. And we have a little house on campus that none of us really go to anymore. But it's at the corner of 8th and Park. And when it's active, normally we have, open speakers and we try to do a bit of an active community, both within the IU community and the greater Bloomington community. But generally our mission is to help prepare the state of Indiana and beyond for climate change. And my work is primarily working with local governments in Indiana and developing tools and resources to make this whole climate preparedness work and climate mitigation work a little bit easier. So we operate under 4 pillars. We have faculty across campus and lots of different departments in the media school and the O'Neill School and the art school, the College of Arts and Sciences and the law school, you name it. Like, climate change is just complex. And so we recognize that we need all sorts of experts to come and help us with to solve these issues, including communications experts, which is why you see effective communication on here. I work as part of the policy and implementation team at the Institute. So I'm kind of taking everything from all the 3 other pillars and taking it out to the local governments as much as possible. So you guys didn't ask for this, but I'm gonna speak to it really quick anyway. We're about to release a model solar ordinance for the state of Indiana. I know we're hoping to release this in August, and I was really hoping it would be done by today, but I think it might be early next week instead. But it's coming soon, so it's something that Bloomington might be interested in. But you know, it's a solar ordinance. It's a starting point that Bloomington could go and edit and tailor to our community. So so look for that. I'll make sure you guys know about it when it comes out. But I thought you might be interested. But I am here today to talk about the Hoosier Resilience Index. So this is a tool that was released almost exactly a year ago. And there's a video here, but I'm not going to play it because, well, anyway. But so specifically, this is a tool designed to help local governments in Indiana that want to do something about climate change. It helps them understand how climate change is going to impact them directly. So we have climate projections that are downscaled to every incorporated city and town in the state of Indiana and every single county. So that means that, you know, I think, so for those of you that are familiar with climate projections, generally, I mean, we have, the best we have at the national level is our regional climate projections that are released every 4 years or so from a task force at the federal level. But Indiana is very lucky that we have that downscaled just to the state of Indiana. And so what we have done, and by we, I mean scientists at Indiana University in partnership with some scientists at Notre Dame, have taken this and downscaled the information to the even more local level. And so now when we're working with mayors, they can't say, oh, but this is Indiana-wide data. This doesn't apply to me. Or they can't say, this is just the Midwest data. This doesn't apply to me. We're different than the whole Midwest. Now we have data that's specifically for Bloomington. And so the mayor of Bloomington can use that to make decisions. So to develop this tool, we conceptualized it, and then we started meeting with mayors and city staff and county staff, and we got their input on what would be most helpful for them. Then we had about 4 communities beta test it, and we've had, I think 13 communities have already completed it, if not 15. I'd have to go back and check my numbers. We've had a couple complete it in the past couple of weeks. So it's called the Hoosier Resilience Index, but it's not a ranking tool. It may sound like one, but it's really not meant to be. When we first started developing the index, we were meeting with these mayors, and they all said, we don't want a ranking tool, because what happens is that these ranking tools come out, and then you hear, maybe you hear a press story on it, and then everybody forgets about it. So we wanted something that was more interactive and helpful for the local governments. Well, I'll just go on to the next slide and kind of explain what it's all about. So the tool is divided into 2 parts, climate vulnerability and then the readiness assessment. So most of what I'll be talking about today is part 1, because that's the climate projections. And all of that, it's information. So we're taking data from publicly available sources and data from this climate downscaling and putting it all online, and so that it's free and available to anybody who visits the website. And the second part is a readiness assessment. And so this is a tool that local governments can use. There's a set of 8 worksheets, 1 for the economic development department, 1 for the planning department, 1 for emergency management. So everybody's filling out a different worksheet, because all local government staff are dealing with the impacts of climate change, or going to be dealing with the climate change if they haven't already, on a daily basis. And so this helps them understand what they're already doing that helps preparedness for climate change, and what else they could be doing and where their weaknesses are, so that they can try to improve. So Bloomington has completed this readiness assessment for the most part, and so has Monroe County. Monroe County is almost done. So I'm really excited, because this will be the first time in the state in which we've had both a city and a county in the same area completed. And so we can now compare those answers. And I think we'll learn a lot, and the local governments themselves will learn a lot from that process. So, so sticking to part one, so those are the 8 different worksheets I just mentioned. And each of the worksheets have about 10 questions each. And they're not yes, no, it's more of on a sliding scale, with 0 being no, we're not doing this, 3 being we're kind of doing this, and 5 being yeah, we're absolutely doing this and we're doing it really well. So again, sticking to part one, so we're providing data on extreme heat, extreme precipitation projections, and then we provide some maps on how land is used in the floodplain. And then we're overlaying that with social vulnerability data from the US Census, from the American Community Survey. And so, so you'll kind of see all this play out, but I just wanted to show this slide to demonstrate that we're just taking all this stuff from what everybody else is already doing, and we're just putting it all in one place so that it's easier to access and use. So for Bloomington, so this is the information that's presented on the website, and I'll show it to you guys in a minute. But so for Bloomington, right now, on average, we get about 26 days per year that are at or above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And by the 2050s, Indiana climate scientists project that's going to be between 74 and 87 days per year. So that's tripling, which is a lot more hot days. And then the second line on here you see is average nights per year at or above, or I guess above 68 degrees. So it's not getting below 68 degrees. And that's currently we're at about 25. So these are nighttime temperatures specifically. So there's about 25 of these nights per year, but we can expect that to go up to between 57 and 69. But this one is often overlooked, and it's so important. And the reason is because we're seeing emergency room visits increase when the nighttime temperatures aren't getting below 68 degrees, because our bodies need a chance to cool down at night. Not everybody has air conditioning. Some people just prefer to sleep with the window open. And, you know, if we're already a vulnerable individual, you know, people, elderly, pre-existing conditions are more likely to experience those heat-related illnesses. And there can be mortality rates that increase as a result. And I mean, I think for those of you that remember the Chicago heat wave, or even the 2003 heat wave that went through Europe, there's just massive amounts of mortality that was just could have been prevented from neighbor to neighbor check-in programs and all sorts of things. So these are some numbers to really pay attention to. And this is something that's kind of a slow boil. You know, we're not really paying attention to it, and we're seeing temperatures increase, and yeah, what's a hot day here and there? But when we're having these heat waves come through, it's really something we should be thinking about. So the climate projections for Bloomington, this is a per decade metric, whereas the heat was a per year metric. So this is showing the average number of extreme precipitation events per decade. So right now, on average, Bloomington gets about 19 storms per decade that are at or above 2 inches within a 24-hour period. We expect that to go up to 22 to 23. So this might not seem like a big jump, but it's concerning when you think about the other factors. So we know that precipitation is coming down in heavier downpours. So this green map here, so this shows historical precipitation and how that's increased. So this isn't even a projection. This is what's already happening. So between 1895 and 2019, in Monroe County, we received on average 8.1 inches of more rain per year. And that's just, you know, over the past, you know, what, 100 years or so, 125 years. So you can see as we're looking into the future that that's only going to get worse. And I can tell you that, so the folks at Purdue produced this graph, and they updated it, that used to be to 2016, and they updated it to 2019. And the jump was so dramatic that they recalculated this 3 times to make sure that they were correct. Because before we were seeing like a 5-inch increase, but just in the last 3 years, we've seen such a dramatic increase that those numbers jumped dramatically. So I think we can expect to see this as the years go on. So the other thing that the website shows is how land is used in the floodplain. So Bloomington has 634 acres of floodplain within its jurisdiction. And 9% of that is agriculture, 18% is wetlands, and then 73% is developed. So we like it when there's a wetland in the floodplain because that's what's meant to happen there, and it's a nice way to manage that water. But we're more concerned when we're seeing development in the floodplain. And so this is a place where the Planning Commission can really step in and understand these numbers and you know, as we're writing and developing zoning code ordinances, as we, you know, as we did last year, that's something to really think about, because if we're putting more development in the floodplain, then that's not a good thing. And I think this is, so, you know, I think it's pretty common that cities, hopefully, understand they shouldn't be allowing construction in the floodplain. But I think what's less known is that how floodplains are defined is based on historical flood events. It's not based on the projections that we're seeing. And so the floodplains is like where the line is drawn is expected to expand over time as we're getting these heavier rain events. And so when we're looking at the outline on the map, we're not just looking at the outline, we need to be looking a little bit past that outline in the communities that are close, but not quite in the floodplain. So, so this is Bloomington. The yellow is the city outline. And so you can see the floodplain. And Bloomington doesn't really have a lot of floodplain compared to a lot of communities in Indiana. But they're still there and they're still interacting with developed areas. So we should think about those. And so so this is the map that you can see on the website that I'll show you on the website in a bit, but I've taken a few snapshots in the meantime. Oops, this is not the right map there. There we go. Okay, so I think, well, I think I just had a slide I forgot to delete there. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is that on that map, we've also integrated the US Census data so that we can take a look at the equity issues near floodplains. So, so we can look at socioeconomic status, household composition and disability, minority status and language, and housing and transportation. And so you can see the different American Community Survey pieces of information that are incorporated into each of these. So socioeconomic status, you know, we have people that are below poverty, that are unemployed, below a certain income level, that don't have a high school diploma. And so we overlay that with a floodplain. And so here's what that looks like. So again, this is Bloomington, and so you can see the floodplain. And then these lines are the different census tracts. And if it's a darker green, that means that there's a higher percentage of socioeconomically vulnerable residents in that census tract. So darker green is bad. So this is comparing census tracts just within the state of Indiana. So these dark green census tracts are more vulnerable compared to the rest of the state than these lighter green census tracts. So what that means is that when we see a census tract that has this dark green and has floodplain, then we really want to pay attention to where that floodplain is and what it's near. And so, yeah, that's just a reminder of what socioeconomic vulnerability is defined as here. So, so this is, I'm zooming in. So this is Switchyard Park. And we've got Bryan Park over here. But you can see that this floodplain, you know, this is not a very socioeconomically vulnerable census tract in Bloomington, but you can see here it is. And here you can see how it's getting pretty close. I think that there's some houses in here, if I remember right. I also think that that has the walls next to it, that stream has the walls next to it. So it's a little buried, but anyway, so this is an area we should pay attention to in Bloomington and try not to build anything important next to it that would cause some economic catastrophes. And then, so this is a little bit So this yellow line again is Bloomington, and as you guys know, Bloomington has a little bit of a weird jurisdiction with some missing pieces here and there. So that's why this looks really weird, but on this side is the city of Bloomington, and on this side is not the city of Bloomington. Sorry about that. And so, but you can see this floodplain, and these are houses, and these are factories, and this is the railroad, and so you can see that floodplain that's just there. And so, you know, a house right here probably has flood insurance because the mortgage company or the bank is going to say that house needs to have flood insurance, but the house that's right here probably doesn't. And that's the house that we're concerned about. So, so you guys can get on and play with these maps. To do that, it's the website is hri.eri.iu.edu, or you can just Google Hoosier Resilience Index. And you'll see this at the top of the page, and you're just going to click on climate vulnerability. And then you can see that. So once you click on climate vulnerability, then you'll see this pop up. And so you just type in Bloomington or any other town you're interested in, or any other county you're interested in for Indiana, and you'll click search, and then it pops up. So that's part one, and I'll go over the website on that in a second. But so this is part two, the readiness assessment. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but you know, it's those 8 different worksheets I mentioned earlier, and these are a list of the communities that have completed it so far. And this is a nice little quote from Mike Spinks, who completing this assessment prompted him to think about some issues he hadn't thought about before, which was nice. And now he's doing a stormwater plan because of working through these questions. So that's really great. So I think I was on an email chain with you guys, so you should have my email if you need it. But let me see if I can pull up the website here. Are you guys seeing my browser now? Yeah, okay. All right, so if I go to hri.eri, so I'm going to the HRI website. I'm gonna click on climate vulnerability. I mean, there's a bunch of additional information on this homepage. You can look at the whole state of Indiana, but so here I type in Bloomington, I'll select Bloomington. And now I'm still on the same page, it just jumped down. So if I scroll back up, you can see it's the same page. But so now you're getting kind of the details of the climate projections for Bloomington and for precipitation. And then now you're getting to the community sensitivity map. And you can turn on different layers, how land is used, the floodplain, and then the vulnerability information. And then there's a key over here to help you interpret the colors. But yeah, I'm not going to click on everything now because, as I said, it takes a while to load when we're doing Zoom, but you guys can play with it. But I'll stop there. What questions do you guys have?
I was just wondering about the worksheets. Who is completing those within each county? Like, is there somebody designated to that role?
So each community that's completing the worksheets is handling it a little bit differently, but what we recommend is that we ask for one point of contact within the local government. And then that contact distributes the worksheets to the different contacts across city government, and then fills out the answers. Maybe the coordinator needs to go to somebody else to find the answer to a question. Once they have all those, it's all an online assessment, and it's tailored to each community. So Bloomington isn't going to see the same questions that Monroe County sees, because Monroe County is a county government and Bloomington's a city government. But generally, you know, the idea is that the people with expertise over the topics are the ones that are supposed to be answering the questions. And then there's one coordinator to collect them.
Lauren, what's her last name, will be talking to us in December about Bloomington's specific looks at these things. So, yeah.
Yep, Lauren Travis, the Assistant Director for Sustainability.
Just an observation. One of the things about the National Flood Insurance Program is yes, it does exclude the fact that there are going to be residents and businesses that are within our floodplain through a few years went through a major upgrade system. At least cost per $1,000 of assessed value significantly increased. And one of the realities of the flood program, it's not like a traditional insurance company in that the problem is the fraction of what is actually in the losses per year, and it's become more and more contentious because of the fact that it then bounces back to the general taxpayers to pay up for it. But designated floodplains that do not have insurance coverage, and generally it's the lower income people make environmental justice. This gets back into one of those issues related to environmental justice.
Yeah, so Don, your internet was cutting out, at least for me. I don't know if it was for other folks, but you make a good point. There's a strong environmental justice tie here. That's why we wanted to include this social vulnerability information, so local governments will have the information at their fingertips to start to think about these issues. And obviously, you know, we're providing this information at the census tract level, and it gets much more refined than that depending on your neighborhoods. But we all know our community is way better than a census tract is going to tell us about anyway. So
it would also be very important that FEMA be starting to model, think about what the impact of an increased precipitation would be over a drainage basin. What if we increase our storm events and worst average 10-year rainfall. So the probability maps are going to have to change if the precipitation is changing. So it'd be interesting to see the impact of what that increase would actually amount to.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point again, Don, and I forgot to mention before that the floodplain is specifically tied to riverine flooding. So streams flooding, that's when people talk about the floodplain, that's what they're talking about. That does not count for street flooding. So Bloomington has some significant problems with street flooding, just like any community does, because
and also flash flooding. And where I live in 2007 or 2008, when we had the regional mass flooding, I literally watched a flash flood come down, take out my neighbor's fence.
Don, can you let Andrea go on with her presentation and then ask questions at the end or whatever?
Sorry. So thank you, David.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I've finished bulk of the presentation, so I'm happy to take questions now, but I will mention that that the reason why some of the street flooding is taking place is for several reasons. And even these flash floodings, the reasons why it's taking place is because the pipes, our stormwater pipes, were built for a certain size storm, and now our storms are much bigger. They can't accommodate that. And so that combined with development happening, so anytime there's something is paved over, that's collecting more and more rainwater. into the storm sewer system and going into the river. And so then where's that water going to go? You know, it's going to go into our streets and into our basements. And that's exactly the reason why, I mean, especially with the problem with development, that's the reason why as soon as FEMA or the Indiana Department of Environmental, the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, as soon as they publish a floodplain map, it's out of date because development is constantly happening and impacting the way water flows within a community. And so, I mean, Bloomington is doing a good job of adding green infrastructure across the community, because the more places where there's green infrastructure, or plantings, gardens, bioswales, any of that is gonna collect more rainwater and prevent that from going into our basements. So, so that's ultimately a good thing, but yeah. So what other questions are there that I can answer?
Do you have a problem with, because I know in Bloomington and Monroe County, we are lucky enough to have governments that are somewhat responsive, more than somewhat responsive to things like this. Do you have a problem with a lot of local governments in Indiana just not replying, or have you yet to work through all of them? Because I know that's a big task to work through all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it varies. We've been really surprised at the communities that are responsive. I mean, I think climate change is a divisive word or phrase, but when we talk about these issues across the state, we talk about increased flooding, we talk about higher temperatures. I think from the surveying that we've done across the state, there's not a lot of contention. The majority, I should say it this way, the majority of Hoosiers believe that climate change is happening. It's the contentious part is why it's happening. So it gets more contentious when you talk about whether it's human caused or just part of the natural cycle of things. Scientists know and affirm that it's human caused. But when I'm doing this work, I can choose to, depending on the audience, I can choose to avoid that part of the conversation and strictly focus on the higher precipitation events that we're seeing, the heavier precipitation events, and the increasing temperatures. And everybody wants to hear about that. And I think what's especially useful about this tool is that it provides information for every single incorporated city and town in the state of Indiana. And so, you know, I can go to Spencer, I can go to even Ellettsville and provide information specific to Ellettsville. And Ellettsville would normally say, oh, nobody has information for me, I just use Bloomington's information. And so because we're saying, oh, wait, no, we have information specific to you, then they're more interested to stop and have that conversation. So that's been helpful.
That's an interesting point that you brought up first, in that I've noticed when I talk to people who are perhaps a little bit more conservative or may not necessarily agree with climate change as much, or the conversation surrounding climate change, they'll say, I don't believe climate change is real. And then you go, oh, but have you noticed that there's more flooding near where you're at? Or have you noticed that it gets hotter in the summer than it used to? And they go, oh yeah, 100%. So I think it's good that you guys market it that way, rather than going full force from the real climate change is a human caused event. I think it's better to break it down like you are doing into more real life examples for them.
Are you going to be able to extend this forecast to some of the secondary effects, like higher temperatures means more fires and more pest insects, and more flooding means potentially more mosquito-borne diseases and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the Readiness Assessment does. Is so there are 10 different worksheets, or 8 different worksheets, as I mentioned, but there are 22 different impacts listed. So we read through the Indiana Climate Change Impacts Assessment and some other reports too that have come out for Indiana. And we pulled out the ways that climate change is going to impact the state based on, so the 3 main drivers are I should say the 2 main drivers are heavier precipitation and increasing temperatures. And then we created a map that shows all the cascading impacts that happen from those 2 main impacts. And then we pulled out the impacts that local governments can do something about. And that's what we included in the readiness assessment piece of the Hoosier Resilience Index. So that's where you see the increase in vectors and mosquito-borne diseases and other pest-borne diseases. That's where you're going to see health impacts from flooding even, or health impacts from heat, or even indoor air quality issues as a result of rising temperature combined with heavy precipitation events. And so we tried to get at that through the readiness assessment.
One area in particular is very much tied to, as far as other pests, are ticks. Globally, the migration of ticks into cooler climates is being documented in Europe, North America, Eurasia, and I assume even here in Bloomington.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a question in the readiness assessment about what health departments are doing for that. And I can tell you, based on the trends that we're seeing, is that the two worksheets that are receiving the lowest scores across the state is public health and then economic development. And so what that tells us is that local governments are not thinking about how climate change is going to impact their local economies. Maybe they have economies that are heavily dependent on certain temperatures. Maybe they have economies that are dependent on not getting flooded all the time, which all of us do. And then the public health section, that's telling us that the county health departments aren't really thinking about climate change yet. Obviously, at the moment, they're very distracted. And we created this assessment before the pandemic. But there's a long way to go in that category. So it's been interesting to start to look at the trends that are emerging as these local governments are describing what they are and are not doing to be prepared for climate change. And so that information, so we don't release the scores publicly, that's up to the local government to do, but we will, but we do look at them internally and we design our programs around them. So we're in the process right now of just designing so another trend we're seeing is that local governments aren't really thinking a lot about what they can do to prepare their residents and communities for increasing temperatures. And so we're designing a little cohort program to help communities think about how they can change their policies and practices to make their residents be able to withstand those heat waves.
A question of compatibility comes to my mind. Is the city, I assume it has a GPS system, different zonations that are coming out of the UDO. Will that be compatible with your platform?
So I didn't catch your question because your internet cut out.
Oh, sorry.
Type it into the chat or try again.
Is the city's geographic information system compatible with your system?
Yeah, so we so we have this online map that anybody can use, and hopefully it's pretty user friendly. If you're not used to working with maps, hopefully you'll be able to figure it out. That's what we hope. But we also have the GIS data layers that can be uploaded in if there's a staff member at a local government that can use GIS and knows how to work with that data, that they can upload that directly to their computer if they'd like to use it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you all so much. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's really fun being back to see you all, and I hope you're doing well. It's been a rough year.
Thank you, Andrea. We really appreciate you coming by. Like I said, we miss you dearly. If you ever want to come back to us, we would welcome you with open arms.
You bet.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right, so we'll move on to our reports from various commissions. Do we have a report from the Tree Commission tonight?
Yeah, let me get my notes here. Tree Commission most months meets the day before our meeting, and mostly what happened yesterday was we talked about the possibility of sending letters. Well, first of all, we got the usual reports from the city's urban tree person, and she told us, I sent that information to you about all the trees that have been cut down and ones that are being planted. Then we talked about some of us wanting to write a letter to the library and the school board to talk about Bachelor Farm Forest, and hoping that they would put up signs describing how those trees had come to be planted by school kids 20 years ago and so on. And then one of our members pointed out that, well, gee, those are both county organizations and we're a city organization. And furthermore, our stated job of the Tree Commission is to provide ideas to the urban forester. I mean, that's written in as the thing we're supposed to be doing. So we decided that we would not, as a Tree Commission, try to take things further with the Bachelor Forest because it's out in the county. And 4 of us got together and set up a separate committee, and we haven't come up with a name for ourselves yet, but we will be working to try to get signs put into the forest out there and so on, and possibly also recommend to them how to manage the forest in the future. So Tree Commission won't be doing that, but we will be, the 4 of us. It includes Dedamia, our former head of this group, and Tom Coleman and George Hegeman, and the 4 of us will be doing that. So that was something we spent quite a bit of time on at the Tree Commission. And there wasn't, well, we also talked about a couple of sidewalk projects that the city is going to be doing and some trees that need to be taken down along the way and so on. And so they'll be cutting some trees and maybe planting a few as well. And there's a place right near Switchyard Park. It's kind of on the edge of the park where there's some trees that need to be cut down. I'm forgetting the reason why. And we decided that it'd be best just to cut them down and leave them lying in place to prevent people walking into that area. I don't know the reason for wanting to do that, but they will be planting some additional trees to make up for trees cut down. And the other place we looked at was Cascades Park, where there are big things going on, building better sides to the creek there because it's eroding badly. And they'll be cutting down some trees there. And for each tree that's cut down, they're planting 5 others, both there and over near the dog park. So that's the main thing that happened in the Tree Commission.
A lot of stuff. Thanks, Dave. Does anyone have any questions for Dave about the Tree Commission report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Monroe County Environmental Commission, who did not meet this month, so there's no report to be given. We'll move on to the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability. Do you have a report on that, Don? I know you said you have a little something to say.
The meeting turned into a sort of non-meeting with a number of various discussions because they did not have a quorum. There was a letter that they, but my notes aren't clear as to what the letter was about, and I don't quite recall what the topic of the letter was, but they were thinking in terms that it would be joint with us, kind of a different relationship or thing with us. There was discussion from David Rollo about using burning, collecting and making biochar, which anyhow, there was it was basically a little bit over, again, Linda went over some of the things that she went over with us. So not a lot to say there. Or Laura, rather.
Sorry, I had to go yell at my cats. Perfect. So any questions for Don about the Commission on Sustainability report? Seeing none, we'll move on to ERAC. Do we have an ERAC report? Do we currently have a representative to ERAC?
Yeah, Dave, that's you.
Oh, that's me, but we meet every 2 months and have not met.
I always forget that. I'm sorry, Dave.
The last one, yeah.
All right, so no ERAC report. The MPO, I was unable to make the MPO meeting this month, and I thought they uploaded them to CAPS, but they do not. I do get the agendas though, so and all the materials for the meetings, and they currently are reviewing their 2045 draft transportation plan. Which I sent a couple questions to the MPO staff because I'm curious whether or not they'll have a significant public comment period for that draft plan. And if they are going to have a future public input session, whether or not that might be something that this group is interested in looking at and providing possible comments for. That could be something to look at in the future. I'll keep you updated on that plan and where it's going. That's their main thing that they're working on right now. It's a 141-page report. I will send it to you all in case anyone's interested in some light reading before you go to bed. Yeah, it's a pretty substantial project we're working on currently. Any questions about the MPO report? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Friends of Lake Monroe report.
Okay. As I think I've told you before, the Friends of Lake Monroe has a 2-year research grant to study what's going on around the lake and to try to help preserve its environmental goodness over the years. That grant is a bit more than halfway through. There's a steering committee consisting of 20 people from various government organizations around the watershed. And the biggest part of the watershed is actually in Brown County and not very much in Monroe County, and certainly none at all in the city of Bloomington. I represent the Environmental Commission on that steering committee. Let's see, they will be looking into, well, I think I've already told you that yeah, at the last meeting, shortly before the last meeting, there was a sampling blitz where people went out to 140 some streams that are in the watershed, and many of them were dry because of the drought. And so we'll be getting data from that made available to the monitoring subcommittee. I'm a member of that, and we don't have those data yet. One thing that they will be doing is looking at E. coli sampled at, I think, 10 different places around the watershed. And well, I've got a research paper. I used to work with I've been to 2 meetings with the EPA over in Cincinnati about E. coli at swimming beaches. And I've got a paper that is based on some other research that's been done that shows that E. coli is not very much coordinated with the things that the viruses and other organisms that actually make people sick. And you may know that you probably have millions of E. coli bacteria in your gut. And they're supposed to indicate, when people measure E. coli, they're just supposed to indicate that there's fecal matter around. But I think that they're not very useful for telling whether anything's going to make you sick or not. Well, one thing that would help that is if all the time they could do samples or go to the experts and find out the source of those E. coli. So we're going to get 10 samples and send them to those experts and find out whether the E. coli are coming from septic systems, from humans, in other words, and those would be the ones you'd worry about the most, or whether they're coming from cattle or dogs or various wildlife. And so, as I say, if the E. coli are coming from human fecal material, then they're probably carrying other things that would make us sick, and it'd be much more worrisome. The next thing we talked about is that the Nashville wastewater treatment plant has been having problems. They're in an area that floods, and since that's in our watershed, we need to worry about the problems with their treatment plant. And then we had a long discussion about when and in what form to release the data that we're getting from not only the sampling blitz, but regular sampling that a group in the university is doing as well. And we're waiting to see what the data actually are before we talk about how it should be released and in what form. So that was the end of that meeting. I'm done.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave about the Friends of Lake Monroe report?
I actually have a question. I'm curious, why is human fecal matter, or like finding E. coli from human fecal matter, worse than like dogs or other species?
It's much more likely that the human fecal matter would be carrying things that make humans sick than fecal matter coming from a dog or from cattle or whatever. We all have different kinds of creatures that make us sick, and so we're more worried about ones that come from humans.
Cool, thanks.
Any further questions for Dave? Cool, thank you, Dave, for all your reports. We'll move on to our Environmental Commission Working Group, which is currently the ECPC. Linda, do you have anything for us today on planning?
I have one small one. This is another Bill Brown owned property. We talked about the one on Fullerton Pike last month, and this one is on the corner of 446 and East 3rd Street. The area that's there already is called Century Village, and there's some vacant land there. And right now it is zoned as a PUD, and the petitioner is requesting to have it rezoned to mixed use corridor. That's an MC. Partially just so it is better aligned, and it'll be easier and less confusing for a possible purchaser. There's not much difference in it at all. Mostly, I looked at the pervious pavement allowabilities, and this one, currently the UDO allows 64% impervious surface, and under the MC, it will only be 60%. So we'll get a little more green space if it's rezoned than if it isn't. But other than that, there's not much environmental, not many environmental issues to talk about at all, because they don't have a plan. This is just asking for the site to be rezoned. So any questions about that? I'm not sure, you know, I've got some more detailed questions in, but so far with everything I've found, I'm not sure if the EC is going to even want to write a memo for this one.
That was my next question. Yeah. If it's that simple, I don't think, and we're already getting more green space, you may as well. Right. It's not much, but it's a little, maybe not enough to send them accolades or anything, but so yeah, we'll talk about that more with the ECPC next week. Perfect. And that's all I have. Any further questions for Linda? Perfect. We'll move on to our old business, which is the environmental justice statement and letter. Ben sent that out a while ago for us all to read over. Before we proceed with asking for any comments, I was wondering, Ben, if you wouldn't mind, for those watching on CATS or those watching now, if you would mind reading through that statement for us so that people are familiar with what we're voting on before we proceed.
Is it possible that you could possibly go to another business matter first, and I can find that on my computer, and then we can come back to it? I
can read it for you if you want. I have it pulled up in front of me right now.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay.
Perfect. Environmental justice summary. Who lives in the residences along our busiest, noisiest streets, breathing in a majority of our car emissions? Who lives in the places with little access to green space? Who lives in homes that flood the most in a storm? When we ask questions like these, are we comfortable with the answers? Probably not. The time has come to familiarize ourselves with the concept of environmental justice. This concept essentially states that all people should enjoy the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards in the areas that we live, learn, and work. These environmental and health hazards often mean pollution and can be more descriptively identified by the proximity and exposure to increased rates of air pollution, water pollution, flooding, dust, odor, noise, and light pollution, hazardous waste, illegal dumping, and toxic runoff into neighborhoods and nearby water bodies. These hazards may be posed by any number of industrial or ecological settings. Land use policies and local zoning codes have historically been tools for segregating people and concentrating pollution in low-income and minority communities, creating the need for the environmental justice movement. This will no longer stand. This is a byproduct of historical racialized processes that devalue minority spaces and accrue value to white locals. One example of this process is expulsive zoning, in which the zoning of a stable minority or low-income community is changed from a residential area to an industrial area. This can create the growth of pollutants in that area. Other examples of policies that contribute to environmental justice issues include mortgage lending discrimination, redlining, restrictive covenants, and support for suburbanization. While there may not be smokestacks and heavy industry here, environmental injustice creeps in a myriad of smaller ways. We must remain vigilant in our own communities to ensure this doesn't happen. When the Bloomington Environmental Commission reviews plans for new development and crafts recommendations for approval, we often discuss issues relating to environmental justice. How will the development impact affordable housing? How many impervious surfaces will it add to our community, which increases flooding? And how accessible will it be to the public or shared transportation, which reduces car emissions? We want the best for our community, and we must hold one another accountable to ensure the environmental equity for all Bloomingtonians. Together we must stand. The environmental justice statement reads as follows. The Bloomington Environmental Commission is committed to ensuring our community develops in a way that does not disproportionately expose vulnerable minority and low-income populations to environmental hazards such as increased rates of air pollution, water pollution, flooding, dust, odor, noise and light pollution, illegal dumping, toxic runoff into neighborhoods and nearby water bodies, and ensuring impartial green space. We are committed to viewing new development plans through the lens of environmental justice and will incorporate this perspective into our recommendations going forward. We cannot challenge these injustices without recognizing our own biases, and it is our job as commissioners not only to protect the environment, but to ensure that the decisions that we make create a positive and equitable impact. And then it says the statement reflects the opinion of this commission only and does not necessarily represent the view of the city of Bloomington. The commission is composed of residents who serve as volunteers to inform and advise their fellow residents, city staff, and elected officials. This statement is for informational purposes only. So now that everyone's familiar with what we're talking about, do any commissioners have any amendments or edits they want to offer at this point in time? Dave?
I have a question. I don't understand the reference to a letter. What is the letter and who would it be designed to go to?
The letter was intended to go to the HT.
So the 3 paragraphs above the statement, is that the letter? Or what is the letter? I'm still not.
The letter is everything that he wrote, that he read. The statement was just the second to the last paragraph.
So the statement is what we're adopting, I believe, and the letter is what we're voting on to send, correct, Linda and Ben?
I believe so.
Okay. It's like a resolution, but written as a guest column or something similar.
What I printed out, it looked like the statement was the very last paragraph. What are you saying? It's the next to the last?
Well, because he read the disclaimer.
Oh, right.
It is the last paragraph, but Andrew read the disclaimer.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Any questions, edits, or amendments from anyone else that they want to ask or offer? I'll add the comment that I am impressed by this, and I support it wholeheartedly, and I think it's a good message for our commission to stand on, particularly as these issues become more and more prevalent and well known in our community. It's important that we address them, I think, with full force in our decisions that we make here. So
I agree with that and would certainly vote to, in fact, why don't I move that we send the letter to the HT and that we adopt the statement. Both parts.
We have a second?
Second.
Not yet. Okay, there we go. Linda, can you call the roll?
Yes. Bailey.
Sorry, are we voting or on the?
Yeah.
Okay, approved, yeah.
Matt.
Yep, also yes, approve.
Don.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Okay.
Passes. Thank you, Ben, for
You forgot me.
Oh.
Oh, how did I do that? Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize so much. Shelby.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. Now it's unanimous. Thank you, Ben. So the next question is Ben going to submit this letter to the HT on behalf of the commission, or who's going to take charge of that process?
I can do that, unless someone else wants to.
It needs to be sent to me first, so I can send it to my superiors.
You should already have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent that, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, something like that.
Right. I just want to make sure I've got the right copy.
Do you want me to send it again?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so
it went through a few edits, so I just want to make sure I've got the right copy.
Okay, so Linda will submit it to be approved by the powers that be, and then she'll send it. She'll let Ben know, and then Ben will submit it to the HT. And then when that gets published, someone will let you all know, just so you can take a look. And it's pretty cool to see something you worked on be published like that. I also would like to ask that the actual environmental justice statement, either this entire letter, its entirety, or just the statement, be added in some shape and form to the Environmental Commission page on the city website. So either we can put in our description, either just the environmental justice statement itself as a paragraph, or we can put a hyperlink to the letter, or both. Whichever the city thinks is best, Linda, I would say. That way, when people look us up, that's one of the first things they see.
Okay, I can take care of that.
Thank you, Linda. Does anyone have any other questions or things to add about the environmental justice statement? All right, thank you again, Ben. We really appreciate that. Moving on in our agenda, next is new business. The first on that being plexes and city zoning changes. We recently had some members of this commission ask why we had not pursued during the UDO discussion a conversation around plexes. And I want to explain why I made that argument during the UDO conversations. So there's two commissions that handle environmental issues in Bloomington. There's the Commission on Sustainability and the Environmental Commission. The way I differentiate between the two is the Environmental Commission is more of a, I want to say, a science-based body, in that when we make decisions is usually based on impervious surface percentage, setbacks, protecting waterways during construction, that sort of thing. So we're more of a development and planning environmental fact body that advises based on the facts that we see in the planning materials that are given to us to the Plan Commission. That's one of our main focuses. During the UDO, we did the same thing with the UDO process. We went through the UDO and offered amendments based on, setbacks and water features and fences for gardening, that sort of thing that we thought could help make the environmental situation in Bloomington better over the long term. The Sustainability Commission focuses on environmental justice, and they also focus on things like socioeconomic status, equity, and in that, they build a very similar argument. They don't advise the Plan Commission. They don't very often write recommendations to the city councilor, but they work on things like they have a number of reports that they issue regarding sustainability practices that they recommend to the city to adopt in the future. There have been conversations since I become chair by members of the city council and city staff that it may be worthwhile to eliminate either the Environmental Commission and move all responsibilities to the Commission on Sustainability, or to combine the two into a combined body to work on those issues together so that we wouldn't have two bodies in Bloomington dedicated to environmental issues on different spectrums. During the UDO process, one thing that the Commission on Sustainability, from what I saw, discussed were plexes. And the discussion on plexes often recycled around the conversation of environmental justice and the conversation of socioeconomic status and affordable housing. It was largely, I found the conversation on plexes during the UDO process to be largely an affordable housing conversation more so than an environmental conversation. So I figured that since we were offering so many other dozens of amendments on the UDO, regarding to things other than plexes. And from what I had seen, the Commission on Sustainability had been discussing plexes specifically. I thought it would be best if we did not try to step on their toes and vice versa to avoid the further perception that we should not be two separate bodies. Because I think there is value in the Environmental Commission being its own organization. We have existed since the 1970s, and I think we do offer a valuable input on planning that is specific to fact-finding and the science behind sustainable development. So that is the reason why I did not push for us to do plexes. If you guys have any questions or comments, I'm willing to hear them. Dave, I see you raising your hand.
I think you're missing an important point here, that one of the issues is density. And the plexes would increase the density of the city. And that would mean that fewer people needed to travel in automobiles to places further out. And so it saves on gasoline and CO2 going into the air. I mean, I think that's an argument that I heard in this group back when we were talking about the UDOs, and we never sort of took that up, I think, but I thought somebody was complaining that we had not.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that comment, and Andrew for all that context. I appreciate it. So I understand what Andrew's saying, but on the other hand, we literally just adopted an environmental justice statement a minute ago. So it seems like environmental justice is now part of our purview. And I agree with David that access to public transportation and walkability is fundamentally environmental. We address the problem of climate change, which is a sort of master problem that looms over all individual environmental problems. And planning is absolutely central to how Bloomington is going to address climate change and reduce emissions. So the question of whether the Sustainability Commission and the Environmental Commission are both going to exist, to me, is purely academic and frankly irrelevant to the wider problem. I don't care if we're called the Environmental Commission or the Sustainability Commission. I just want, Bloomington to have a, healthier climate future, essentially. So I would suggest that we take a stand on this issue if the rest of the commission is interested. I think that it's a great opportunity for the Environmental Commission to bring science to the table, because there is science on density and its relationship to emissions and so on. Like, it's there. So if we want to make it science focused, that can be done. So that's just my 2 cents.
I'd like to add on to that, is density also directly is going to impact runoff. Looking at more compact neighborhoods. So yeah, there's a lot. And to me, social justice also includes the efficiency of homes. So there's a whole, everything really interrelates back to everything else. That's ecology. So it's anyhow. That's all.
You also have to take into account that many people in the city think that their homes are in places that have always been single family zoning, and they ought to stay that way. And people have strong feelings about that. So.
Yeah, I understand this was a really touchy issue in Bloomington, and I followed a lot of the conversation about it last year. And it was emotional for sure for a lot of people. But I think that our purview as the Environmental Commission is to address problems that are environmental. And my understanding, at least, is that people who are opposed to the plexes, opposed to the potential for increased density, their issues were not necessarily environmental related. They had to do with not wanting, single family neighborhood to change in its nature, character, and concerns about whether it would cause the price of housing to go up or down. Both arguments were made. But to me, those are not environmental concerns. We can bring that environmental and science-based approach to this problem, and I think it's a voice that could be helpful to this conversation.
There are people who are opposed to the plexus who say that one environmental part about it is that if you're going to have many more people in the neighborhood, noise could go up, and that's an environmental issue.
So I think that there's benefits to having this conversation, definitely. If we wanted to do something, for example, like issue a direct statement to the city council or the plan commission about this, to present it to them during a meeting of their body during reports. We could do that as a body and draft that together and vote on it. We would just have to have someone volunteer to author and propose one, and then we would vote on the position represented in that document. I know that even within this body, even though I know we are all fully committed to both environmental justice and environmentalism and conservation, I do know that even within this body, there are differing opinions on plexes. I'll be transparent in that I am pro-plex, in that I believe that duplexes should be a by right in the code. But I think triplexes and quadplexes, due to the size and scope of them, sometimes compared to single family homes, should be conditional, meaning they must go before the Plan Commission to seek approval. That's just my position. That's not something I'm proposing that we adopt. But I am saying that we would have to come to at least a majority consensus on any letter that we would submit before it is presented to another body or submitted for publication in a newspaper, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I suggest that our statement, because I know the Plex proposal is complex and has a lot of, like any planning zoning change, there's a lot of devils in the details. But might I suggest if we do write a statement that could talk about more broadly the environmental nature of the proposal, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty details about which sections might go forward and which sections might not, just to kind of bring that environmental science perspective.
No, that's a good point. I'm thinking still in the UDO amendment mindset, so that's my mistake. No, I think a nice broad letter underlying the environmental arguments for plexes in any way, shape, or form, because I think we can agree, even if we don't get all plexes by right, that getting some plexes involved in new areas is a win, no matter how incremental. So I think that we should push for the general concept, and we as individual commission members, by the way, you're always welcome to give public comment on your own behalf as a private citizen at these events, and mention that while it's not a position of the entire Environmental Commission, that you as a member of the Environmental Commission feel this way as an involved member of our community. So that's if you want to get into a more specific conversation around policy, you can do that on your own, separate from this body. But I do agree with what Suzanne is bringing up about the more broad letter about the benefits. Does anyone have any further comments about this before we start getting down to who's going to start drafting this kind of, who's going to be working on this? So seeing none, do we have any volunteers of people who want to perhaps collaborate to write this, or even just one person who wants to take the reins on this?
I'm happy to draft something. I will say I am a writer, not a scientist. So if any of you who have a science background want to collaborate with me, I'd open to that, or I can do it on my own.
Well, it seems like once you produce a letter or a position, the rest of us can make suggestions about it. So why don't you give it a start?
I would say let's combine the two ideas. Let's have someone start working on the general draft of the letter with the language flushed out a bit. And then let's have some individuals who have more of the science-based background work on their own to find, locate, and write down some facts that are relevant to the situation. So if you know of a study, for example, on the effects of increasing density versus spread, maybe write down a couple sentences about the facts in question, and then link a source to it so we can include it in the final statement that we do issue. And that way we can work both at the same time on compiling some facts and the letter. And then we don't have to compile the letter and then have a meeting and then wait another month and then do the facts and then vote on it and then maybe re-edit it, because that could take 2 or 3 months. And the city council, I think, wants to start taking this up by next spring, with the Plan Commission, I think, voting on it in January. And then in between that, we have Thanksgiving and Christmas. So there's a large number of days that are going to, people just aren't going to be working on this, if we're going to be honest, because they'll be either with family or they'll be missing their families during the holiday. So I will.
Andrew,
yeah.
I would suggest that you address your concerns right now to the planning department.
Yes.
And not wait and, present it at a council meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Plan Commission has ended public input sessions on the new zoning maps, but they still are accepting comments via email at this time. So if you email the planning department, I don't know if they have a specific email for comments. Linda, you may know that.
I don't. I can ask, but I don't. But I think that right now, I think that's the place that comments should go, as a planning department.
Yeah. So any specific comments like I have about policy, I'll plan on sending a letter with my statement and what I believe should happen with the UDO, specifically with code, because that's my nerdy background, is I do policy work. But I do encourage that with the commission letter that we have someone drafting the letter, and then someone perhaps like Dave and Mike and Don, who have a science-based background with their careers, look into any relevant facts that they may know or have a vague idea about, and then be able to find the sources for us to include in that final letter. And that way we both have a nicely written language and some facts prepared at the same time, so that hopefully the next time we meet, and if it's hopefully done by then, we can just add in the facts, review it, add last minute minor edits, and then approve, and then send it out, because I don't want to see this taking too long and then we miss our window of opportunity. Do we have any more comments on this? We can arrange specifics via email if we need to, but I think, does anyone have any problems with the general format or idea of doing this?
Just one question: is this statement or a letter or whatever we want to call it? Like, is it something we want to send to the HT? Something we want to send to the mayor's office? Like, who do we see as the audience for this?
The planning department, because they're the ones taking comments right now.
I would say that if you want to write it as we did with the environmental justice statement, where you write it to be both as perhaps a guest column in the HT and a letter to the planning department, that could be something to do. Or if you want to, it's more work, but what I do generally when I make larger statements is I will type the larger statement first and then send the full statement with all the facts included to the planning department in this case. And then I would trim up that letter, maybe remove some of the larger portions or more complex versions, and then send that as a column to the HT. That's what I've done in my experience with submitting stuff. Any questions or comments? Last call. Perfect. We'll get working on that, and I would like the goal for that to be to have something concrete to work on, preferably next month, and at the latest at the beginning of January at some point. And we'll work on the details when we figure out the timeline, because I know the holidays can be hectic for people, especially with all the unknowns right now. So we'll move on to our next piece of new business, which is the Environmental Commission Fellow update from Ben. He just wants to update us on some stuff he's been working on our behalf in his own work.
So last time I mentioned that I was working on the connectivity plan and making a pledge and a brochure to contact different neighborhoods. And also I made a map as well, which I'm gonna hopefully share with you if this, oh, maybe not. It's saying there's an error. Maybe I won't be sharing it. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's not working. Oh, I think it's maybe because I'm recording as well. I can't do multiple functions. But yeah, so maybe I'll send out the map after this meeting or tomorrow. And you guys can see the map I made about different neighborhoods that that I identified. That would be a good spot to make or to contact and say like, hey, if you want to put aside some land for either any type of forest, any story of forest. Linda was giving me some criticism how we should be talking to any type of planting would be beneficial in people's backyards, whether it's bushes or flowers or planting trees. Any type of story forest would be beneficial for the connectivity plan. So I have to do some edits on the brochure and the pledge that I created as well. but I'm hoping that I will be able to get that to you guys next week, either on Tuesday or Wednesday, once Linda sends me her final edits. I'll do what I need to do on that, and then I'll send that to all of you for comment and corrections or whatever you guys want to do about that. If you guys have any questions about the connectivity plan, I'm not sure, but I think we might have changed it from contacting like people by email to contacting neighborhood groups instead, because those are easier to contact, and we have that information at hand, versus individual emails we do not. Made it a little bit more realistic. Does anyone have any questions about that? Yes, Don.
Yes, hi. This month's MC Ivers meeting brought up something that struck me that would be germane to the connectivity, in essence, Greenway type of thoughts. They've been approached by a group from Knox County that's trying to get involved into this local, basically national, I forget what the whole thing is. I sent a link, I think, to David and a couple other people today. But the idea, again, gets into some of the same things that have been talked about as far as the connectivity, as far as plants, insects, diversity. But I'll send the information to you because it's MC Ivers people at the meeting, members seem to be fairly enthusiastic about the program, because one of the things, of course, it addresses is invasive plants, and that gets back into biodiversity and all the things that we've been talking about.
Sounds good.
I'm muted. Anything else for Ben? All right. Is that your report, Ben?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate, again, all the work you've done on everything, including the environmental justice letter and the connectivity plan. If we have no more questions for Ben, we'll move on to our final piece of new business, which is the 2021 Environmental Commission elections. We hold elections each year for our officers, which are chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer. Currently, those roles are filled by myself, Dave, and Mike. We hold elections each year, traditionally in January, but our first piece under this piece of new business is amendments that I have offered to the election section of the Environmental Commission handbook, which is what governs our elections as well as our duties and that sort of thing. Like we did with the environmental justice statement, I'm going to read the amendment. First, I'm going to read what the section currently says, so everyone watching at home is aware, and then I'll read the amendment as I have written it. So the current version reads as point D, election of commission officers. Election of officers is held in December, with new officers' terms beginning in January and lasting 1 calendar year. Election of commission officers are taken in the order listed in the bylaws: chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer. A nominating committee will be appointed by the chair in November. This committee will solicit nominations and present a list of candidates at the December meeting, having determined beforehand that nominees are qualified for and willing to serve. Nominations may also be taken from the floor at the December meeting. Election will be by voice vote unless a commissioner requests otherwise. Elections are decided by a majority vote. If there is a tie, the chair will cast the deciding vote. If the sitting chair is a candidate for the office involved in a tie, the vice chair will cast the deciding vote. If there's only a single nominee for each office, the entire slate can be elected by acclamation. My proposed amendment reads as follows. Section B, the election of commission officers. The election of officers is held in February, with new officers' terms beginning in March and lasting 1 calendar year. Election of commission officers are taken in the order listed in the bylaws: chair, vice chair, and then secretary treasurer. A nominating committee will be appointed by the chair in January. This committee will solicit nominations and present a list of candidates at the February meeting, having determined beforehand that nominees are qualified for and willing to serve. Nominations may also be taken from the floor at the February meeting. Elections will be held by secret ballot to be counted by the staff liaison to the Environmental Commission or their designee. Elections are decided by a majority vote. If there is a tie, the chair will cast the deciding vote. If the sitting chair is a candidate for the office involved in a tie, the vice chair will cast the deciding vote. If there's only a single nominee for each office, the entire slate can be elected by acclamation. I presented this amendment because since I've been chair and since I've been involved in the Environmental Commission, and I think Linda shares my concerns as well, it's just been awkward in that when people's terms expire on the Environmental Commission, they expire on January 31st. So when I was elected chair last year, there was a period of time where we didn't know if I'd be allowed to serve because we didn't know if the mayor was going to reappoint me to a second term. This solves that issue in that we will not hold elections until February, so that we'll know everyone whose term has expired, we should know by then whether or not they have been reappointed. This allows more flexibility in that it allows more people to be given the choice to run, because many people choose not to run if they don't know if they'll be reappointed, because who wants to go through the effort of running for an office and then be told you're not allowed to serve anyway. And it just cleans up some other language. You know, it adds in the word then, so you know that you elect chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer in that order. And then I decided it's very awkward, I think, for Bob to be running for an office and Jessica to be running for an office and have people go down and roll call and say, Jessica, Bob, and then Bob wins and you voted for Jessica and Jessica's feelings are hurt. I know that's probably not going to happen because this isn't high school, but I still think there's a level of awkwardness to people voting when speaking aloud for offices with people who they work with on a regular basis. So I think it's best if we just have a non-biased participant in the commission. In this case, it would be Linda or someone designated by Linda. It could be another staff member or something like that, or it could be one of our EC fellows, for example. To count the ballots secretly and tell us the results. And then if there's no multiple candidates for one office as there normally is, we can just vote by acclamation so we don't have to go through a balloting process. I'm open to questions, comments, concerns from anyone regarding this amendment.
Your draft says that elections would be held in January.
So I sent out a second amendment because I had mistyped. I sent it out about an hour before this meeting. That's my mistake. And that's also why I chose to read it out loud because I didn't know if everyone had a chance to read it. It basically, the second amendment just bumps everything back an additional month because I accidentally put January in for the election and that doesn't solve the problem of people's terms expiring in January. So we moved it to February. This is by no means an attempt by me to steal 2 or 3 more months of power. It's just, I think it solves the issue of the awkwardness and allows more people the opportunity, if they want to run, to be able to run with the knowledge that they'll be actually able to serve if they win.
It all sounds fine to me.
If there's no further comments or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve the amendment as written.
So moved.
Second.
Linda, can you call the roll?
Yes, of course. Bailey.
Sure.
Matt.
Yes.
Susanna. I'm sorry. You're muted.
Yes.
Okay. Don.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Shelby.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Dave.
I'd give a thumbs up, but since you're not looking at your screen, yes.
The amendment passes unanimously. So now the next topic is pretty self-explanatory. It's the election procedures. We just read the election procedures and how we're going to go about it now. At the January meeting, on the first meeting of 2021. Before that, I will message the members. Traditionally, the nominating slate is 3 people. I will not choose the people who I intend to nominate in late December, early January to confirm they are willing to serve on the nominating committee. Then at January's meeting, I'll announce the nominating committee. After I announce the nominating committee, anyone interested in running is encouraged to contact the members of that committee and let them know what office you want to run for. If they don't receive nominations from people, they will, between themselves, determine candidates they think are suitable for each office and reach out to them to encourage them to run. And then the slate that they generate will be presented to us at the February meeting. If there's multiple candidates, of course, we'll have a round of secret balloting. If there are no opposed candidates, we will just hold a vote by acclamation. And then this also, one question I had for you, Linda. Do you think that this should impact when we do our bucket list meeting?
That's a good question.
For those who don't know, each year traditionally in January, we hold what we call a bucket list meeting where we, pre-pandemic, would do a potluck, everyone would bring a dish, and then we have a casual meeting where we eat and chat and talk about what things we would like to see change in Bloomington before we leave one way or another, which is why it's called a bucket list meeting. And then we have a vote on what top priorities we would like to tackle from that list that upcoming year. So this past year, one of the things we focused on was the UDO, for example. And then we also wanted to focus a bit on sending more guest columns and letters to the HT, which we've done as well. So I don't know if we should alter that to be after January, or if we should hold it in January and let the retiring possible members still have their input on the next year, or if we should change it so that, you know, that's something I pose as a question because I haven't decided myself what I think.
Well, my first initial response is to keep it in January. In fact, maybe even December, so we could get started on it in January, because then that coincides with the fellows and their work.
So if that aligns the best in a chronological time manner, I'm fine with that as well. If we wanted to have our bucket list meeting next month instead of January, I don't think we need to have a vote on that. I would ask that if anyone opposes that idea, that they let us know now. And if there's no opposition, I'll take that as unanimous consent to go ahead and schedule the bucket list meeting for December. No potluck, not pandemic safe, but you're allowed to snack at home if you want on Zoom. And we'll discuss what we really want to see changed in Bloomington and see what we can do in 2021 to do that. Is there any opposition to that idea?
I also just want, oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that for like in December to January, I have like a month off from school. So I can like spend a lot of time and like just be ahead of hours in the spring and just do whatever you guys need to do, because I'll have nothing else going on during that month. So.
Just could point out that some years our meeting in December could fall fairly close to the Christmas holidays, so some people may not be available.
Well, yeah, that was another when our meeting is next month.
But this 17. Is not part of the bylaws, so we can change that anytime we want, if necessary.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to December or January. I certainly don't think we should push it back. I know we have a lot on our plates, even beyond bucket list. We have to kind of figure out the future of the the groups within the commission.
The working groups.
Working groups, whether that's in a pandemic year or moving forwards. We have a lot of stuff we have to kind of figure out. So I don't know if December or January is best, but I certainly wouldn't push the bucket list meeting back.
Our December meeting will be the 17th this year, which is a bit ahead of Christmas.
Yeah, and since we're doing all the meetings via Zoom, if someone goes home for the holidays, they can still more than likely call in, so we don't have to worry about people having to be physically in Bloomington to meet at that time, which I think is one of the weird perks of the pandemic is it allows more flexibility that way. Cool, so I'll schedule it for December. So in the meantime, all your homework is to think about what changes you want to see in Bloomington that are under the purview of the Environmental Commission for us to address in 2021. That can be any project, big or small. We generally vote, and generally the top 3 we try to focus on. So it helps if the top 3 aren't all gigantic UDO sized projects. So don't be shy to share any idea that you do have that you think would be a good benefit for Bloomington and us. Yeah, Matt?
Do we have a logistical plan? Since we won't have a giant whiteboard, I feel like it could be even trickier than it normally is. And it's not always the smoothest doing the bucket list meeting.
I would say our hosts, either Linda or Ben or myself, share screen, a Word document or something of that sort. So the screen would be half the Word document, half our faces, and then we can go through and write down the ideas on the Word document. And then go through each item on the Word document and have people vote on which ones they want to see on our agenda in the future. I think that's the best way we have available to us currently to do that. If you have a better idea, I'm all ears, because that's all
a good point was just made that we can utilize the chat, whether that's to put forth our ideas or whether that's for some sort of tallying when it's all said and done. We can utilize the chat.
Yep. So I think there are options built into Zoom for us to work around not having the whiteboard. I will miss the potluck though, I will tell you that. All right, so anything else on the topic of elections or the bucket list meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to commissioner announcements. I have no announcement at this time. My main announcement was the draft transportation plan for the MPO. I'm working on contacting Ryan Clements, who used to be on this commission, about that with some details about public comment and that sort of thing anticipated in the future. If they are going to do some substantial public comment going into 2021, that will likely be my bucket list item, would be to focus on the transportation plan and offering amendments the same we did to the UDO. So we'll just move on right down the list. Don, do you have a report for us?
One thing I'll just go ahead and do, and I'll just send the thing that I mentioned before, and I had sent, I think, to David and another person on the commission about the Hometown National Park thing. I'll send a link to that so everybody is on board. Other than that, the only other thing I would point out that from the MC Iris group that they considered, we can, at the meeting, we were pretty happy about how things went last year, or this year rather, with the Asian bush honeysuckle. And about a couple of weeks ago, I met with one of the park staff taking a look at Southeast Park with one of my fellow MC Iris volunteers, that's one of my neighbors. Kind of went over with him the progress that we had made. In Southeast Park. Take a look and see what was accomplished. Part of the park, we got rid of a lot of the invasives. Next year's effort will be probably more difficult with the winter creeper. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Don. Mike, do you have a report?
I've got one thing. I sat in on the hospital development site meetings. And And there are a couple of things in there, environmental implications that might be of interest to us. A lot of people are still stunned that they're going to demolish the hospital and not use it for low-income housing or something, but that's done deal by now. They're going to put a greenway down the middle of it with wetlands and stormwater control. Also, they talked about LEED certification. So, it's a golden opportunity to have a lot of green building features because they're putting in a lot of buildings, 800 some housing units, including apartments. So we might want to get our 2 cents worth in on that.
Thank you, Mike. Dave, do you have a report?
This is actually not specifically environmental, but I've talked about an organization called voteforward.org before. I just put the link to it on the chat. And if you're concerned about what's going to happen to the Senate with the 2 elections in Georgia, you can go to voteforward.org and write letters to people in Georgia trying to get them to vote. And it's easy to get started because you can do as few as 5 letters. And for the main election, I actually did 200, but then I'm retired. I'm currently doing 20 to go to the people in Georgia right now to get them to register to vote. So it's an interesting organization, and as I say, you can get started with just 5 letters. So I would urge you to do that if you're interested in what happens to our Senate. That's it.
Thank you, Dave. Matt, do you have a report?
No announcements.
Bailey?
Nope.
Thank you for being here, Bailey, for applying, and we welcome you again. Just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
If you have any questions at all, you can always email any of us. Specifically, Linda and I get the most emails about that kind of thing, so we're always here to help you if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Shelby, do you have a report?
No, I do not.
And Susanna, do you have a report?
Nope.
Perfect. I muted myself for a second. That ends the agenda items. I have one last thing to ask. Linda, are you the one in control of the master document for the handbook for the Environmental Commission? I assume that's you.
Yes.
Can you add in the amendment that we voted in tonight to that?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So seeing no other items on our agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I don't believe we have to do roll call for adjournment. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye. I think Robert rules of order let you just announce an adjournment, but play it by the book. I follow what the city council does, and the city council does not take roll call for adjournment. They just do a voice vote, which is what I'm going by their example, whether or not that may or may not be entirely accurate. All right, I see sufficient ayes, so the meeting is adjourned at 7:53.